Despite the best endeavours of a Remain-leaning government, the entire Remain-stream media, but especially the BBC, Sky News and Channel 4 News, plus the People's Vote, Tony Blair, John Major, Gordon Brown, Big Business, academia, celebrity loves like Gary Flaming Lineker, and some prat with a megaphone trying to stop Brexit. They failed. It looks like we will finally get Brexit done 4.5 years, long years, after the Brexit battle began. But while many Remainers will be crying into their EU pillows, not all Brexiteers are happy either, with details emerging hourly from the 1,246-page agreement casting doubt over its effect on British sovereignty. Undeniably, many feel the biggest surrender was on fishing. Today on Unlocked, the big question is, to get Brexit done, did we sell out the British fishing industry? To discuss this, we are joined on Unlocked tonight by an A-list of Brexiteers. First, we have Sir John "The Don" Redwood, MP for Wokingham, and the recipient of Unlocked's Brexiteer of the Year award. Great to have you, Sir John. Next,
good evening.
The king of the detail, Unlocked's chairman, Ben Habib, will tell us, does this deal really get Brexit done? Next, we have three guests who have dedicated their lives and entire careers to fighting for the British fishing industry. The Fisherman's Queen, Mummery, the chairman of the Lowestoft Fishing Alliance, Paul Lines, and Aaron Brown of Fishing for Leave. Finally, the Queen of the North, Slater, will give us the reaction from the grassroots. Warning, this may contain expletives. First of all, Sir John, we want to talk, if we can now, more generally about the Brexit agreement before we go into the detail on fishing. As a lifelong Eurosceptic and a champion Brexiteer, how do you feel now that we are just 2 days away from freedom from the European Union?
Well, it's a day I've been waiting for all too long with many other Brexit voters, because I deeply resented the 4.5-year delay that the previous Parliament imposed upon us. And I'm very pleased that as of the 1st of January, it is Independence Day, and we've had confirmation from lawyers today, as I expected, that the main points have been one, that we will be an independent country, that the European Court of Justice won't boss us around anymore, and that if the trade arrangements didn't work out in a satisfactory way, if there wasn't goodwill, we can simply withdraw. So those are extremely important powers. But my challenge now is this to the government. We're taking legal sovereignty back, but we want practical, effective sovereignty. We want to demonstrate that we can now use those powers to change laws, improve grant regimes, improve backing for British business, improve our trading arrangements around the world. And so we're wanting practical examples from the government. And above all, I think we need a better deal for fishing, because of course fishing is the one area where we don't take back proper control for another 5.5 years, because there is this additional transitional period put into fishing. Now, they assure me, the government, that we can regulate and legislate for our fishing grounds from the 1st of January. So I think we do need a better regime for the marine environment and to regulate the practices that some of the large overseas vessels get up to, for example. But we also need surely to be planning the growth of the industry, training new people, encouraging the purchase of new boats, or the recruitment of second-hand vessels that are available, so that we expand our capacity, because I want us to be in a position to exploit all the fish we're allowed under this agreement, and it's not really enough, but above all, to have that really big, successful industry ready for the day when we do take full control of our waters.
As somebody who's said on Unlocked and many, many times elsewhere, and on your excellent John Redwood's diary, taking back full control of our waters was one of your primary aims of Brexit. And everybody on this call tonight, and Express viewers watching, will concur. But looking at the quotas that we've actually got, Boris Johnson's claimed 25%. I mean, for my sins, I spent hours yesterday going through these figures with my 11-year-old son, making this a mathematics project, looking at these quotes, and I can't find anything near 25%. How does it feel to only get 25% when really we wanted full control? I mean, that must disappoint you, Sir John.
Well, I'm deeply disappointed because I've been an advocate in good faith for the British fishing industry, along with others much more knowledgeable than me. But I've always felt we're a maritime nation, and even in landlocked Wokingham that I represent, there are thousands of us who feel that we want stronger coastal communities and that we want to both look after and take on board the fish that we have for our own purposes. We both think we can do a better job at protecting the marine environment and husbanding our fish stocks and land more fish in British vessels and have a much more successful business. And we're now told there's a further delay in getting there. So that's why I'm pressing the government to say, look, what can we do? Can we speed it up? What are we going to do for the industry in the meantime? How are we going to have that much bigger and more successful industry that I thought we all wanted?
Yeah, there are 2 points you mentioned there I'd like to pick up on. The first one is about investing in the industry. And this is something that we all passionately agreed on, that the investment required in new vessels and also onshore processing to give us the ability to export our products so we're not so reliant on European Union exports, because they've kind of got us by the short and curlies in terms of threatening to blockade or tariffs. So this £100 million that Boris Johnson mentioned at the precise moment of announcing the deal, it sounds like a lot, but it's not really a lot, is it? £100 million won't go that far. So will you be pressing for more, Sir John?
Well, yes, but I will be pressing for programs that work. I don't know how much they're going to cost, and I can't tell you how much you're going to get for 100 million until we see the detail. But I can tell you exactly the kind of things we want to do. I do want those coastal communities to have improved harbours and handling capacity for more fish and other things. I do want an integrated approach with free ports and enterprise zones to attract in fish and other food processing and other industrial activities to back up the harbour communities and the harbour employment. And I do want us to start recruiting the extra fishermen and women and the new boats or the second-hand boats that we can acquire so that we've got more capacity. Because I think we should be aiming to double or more our fishing capacity. We've been very badly damaged by the common fishery policy for so many years. It's now a question of timing, because obviously you want to get the capacity ready for when the extra quota is available. We're not going to have as much quota as I would like in the immediate future.
Yeah, and I can see Paul and June nodding away furious there. Another question I'd like to put to you, as an excellent point, is one of conservation and particularly fishing practice. Now, I saw June Mummery in Brussels tearing people a new one about things like super trawlers, which they weren't even aware of, Sir John. The chairman of the fishing committee in Brussels wasn't even aware of this terrible fishing practice. I want to put it to you. Surely the time, and there's a petition going around today calling for the banning of these super trawlers from places like Holland and from Russia that are hoovering the fish out of our sea, because there's a great concern amongst the fishing community that in the next 5.5 years, the EU vessels could decimate our fish because we're not able to police that and monitor them. Surely it's time to place a ban on things like pulse fishing and super trawlers, Sir John.
Well, indeed, and that's what I've called for, because I do think you're right that it's doing too much damage, and that I understand we have the powers as from the 1st of January to pass a general regulation. It obviously has to apply to the UK as well as to everybody else, but I don't think we've got any of these super large vessels, UK flags, and we don't have the pulse fishing, and they are doing particular damage. And when you hear descriptions of these very heavy, large vessels with their huge nets, with a huge amount of weight and possible damage to the seabed, it is very worrying. And we are now more sensitive to marine conservation, and we should be much more sensitive to looking after our stocks, because we want decent live stocks without the death of fish on the bottom that aren't taken for use, so that our medium-sized and smaller vessels can then have a good living as we expand that fleet.
Why do you think it is, Sir John, that in an age where the European Union especially, and it would seem now Boris Johnson, are very, very almost obsessed with environmentalism, with protecting environments, they seem to turn a blind eye to the ecosystems beneath the water? Why is that?
Well, I don't know, and I hope they won't, because the UK government has actually said a lot about that, and George Eustace, I think, has in the past condemned pulse fishing. So my challenge to them is live up to the words now. you tell me you're going to have the powers from the 1st of January. So let's see the proposals. I and many of my colleagues would be very happy to vote those through, because we do think we want to husband our fish stocks and marine environment and get ready for a much bigger, sensibly managed UK fleet, taking more fish and landing more fish in the UK, so that we can both have better marine environment and a much bigger UK industry. That's always been my objective.
There's one really interesting point in the ERG document that's just been released from the Bill Cash meeting you were on earlier, and that is this idea of a robust government has the ability to terminate our agreement with the European Union at the end of this 5.5 period. Is that something that you would like to do, Sir John?
Well, it may be. It depends what we've sorted out and negotiated in the meantime, doesn't it? But it's got to be a negotiation, I guess. But I think you know me, if I'd been handling the negotiations, I would have been very firm, because I always felt that they had a lot to win and they had an awful lot to lose, and that we needed to be very tough. And I think until the very end, Lord Frost was extremely tough, and it paid off. And we got an awful lot of what we wanted without having to make compromises. I think now we need to do an improved job on fishing, and we have some powers, so let's start using them. But I have been saying for some time that I don't just want legal sovereignty, I want effective sovereignty. It's not some kind of abstraction or academic thing. Why do I want Parliament and government to have these powers? It's because I think they can do a better job for the British fishing industry, for British citizens, for British employees. I think we suffered a lot under single market and customs union and common fisheries policy. We can do better. But we do need, as Bill Cash says, a strong government that understands it can use these powers, even if sometimes the EU doesn't enjoy it.
What do you say to those manifest critics, and I listed many of them at the start of the show, who will say that the UK will suffer terribly economically outside of the European Union because it's been a blessing, it's been an absolute dream to be in the EU? What's the economic reality, Sir John?
Well, the economic reality is the opposite. I've recalculated the numbers to take it up to date of our 20 years in the so-called common market and our 28 years from 1992 in the so-called single market. And our growth rate was about half the level of the growth rate we had in the 20 years before we joined the EEC. I left out the immediate post-war period because obviously there was a lot of special factors and catch-up. So our growth rate suffered rather badly. Can't claim it's all the result of belonging to the EEC, but there was no sign of this great boost or advantage, which the Remain side has always told us existed. The graphs and charts show that actually the growth rate fell off. And of course, we had some spectacular bad recessions during our period in the European Union. And the middle one, the exchange rate mechanism recession, was deliberately created by bad European policies, and it knocked us back a long way. And then the banking crash, they too didn't have any answers to that and helped create the atmosphere through their central banking, as did America and Britain, which didn't actually make life easy either.
Okay, great comments. Now, remember, if you're watching out, then you like what you're hearing, please share, please follow us on Facebook at Unlocked_UK. It's at Unlocked United Kingdom on Facebook, beg your pardon, on Twitter and on YouTube. It is at Unlocked_UK_. Cat's got my tongue today, Sir John. I think I'm just so excited about this final imminent exit. So, Sir John, there are going to be lots and lots of people out there, just to wrap up, who are saying Britain has committed a terrible act of self-harm. We've heard this for 4 years. Project Fear, is that going to start again? Are we now going to be hit with a constant barrage of negativity? And tell us, Sir John, how do you see the UK prospering on the world stage, able to trade globally and no longer tied down to the European Union?
Well, I think we're going to have a very good year. I mean, even the Remain forecasters, and most of the official forecasters were very much of the Remain persuasion, are saying we're going to have a fast growth year this year, mainly because we're recovering from the COVID-19 problems that are still afflicting us, but also I think the freedoms that we get will allow the government to do things on tax and to do things on regulation and business, which will help promote our growth rate. And as we've seen, we have a trade secretary who's doing a wonderful job signing up all those trade deals that Remain told us we would never be able to sign. And at the moment, she's doing all the replication of the ones we have with the EU, but she's going to go on and enhance those because the UK will be able to go further than the EU was willing or able to go in promoting deeper and better free trade agreements. And the big one, of course, is that we might end up joining the Pacific Partnership one in the fastest growing part of the world with a lot of other countries. And that may be the way we end up with a deal with America as well, because I think President Biden, when he takes office, will want to change the Trump policy and will want to enter the Pacific Partnership as well.
But now, Sir John, I'm going to let you go soon. I know you have a multitude of media commitments. You're definitely a man in demand, as ever. Certainly, though, at the moment, you've been amazing on Unlocked in 2020. We'd love to have you on and support your work even more in 2021. But please, before you go, Sir John Redwood, could you give us your customary positive, upbeat message to Brexiteers today?
Well, my message is that we're about to have our legal sovereignty, so now work with me and others to make sure that our government takes advantage of all those freedoms, because we can have that bigger fishing industry, that much better agricultural industry. We can have more homegrown produce. We can have more trade agreements with the fastest growing parts of the world. Like Asia, we can subsidize those things we wish to subsidize without fear of contradiction. We can take taxes down where we want to, including VAT. I think it's full of opportunity. And so now the government must grasp that opportunity and say, we're not only sovereign in principle, but we're sovereign in actuality, that we have power for a purpose. And what is the purpose? The prosperity of the British people.
So John Redwood, with typical upbeat candor, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to let you go now. I know you have loads and loads of media knocking on your door.
No, it's not media. It's other MPs getting ready for tomorrow is what I'm doing at the moment.
Well, that's far more important than the media. Thank you, John Redwood, for appearing on Unlocked, and thanks for all your work on behalf of the 17.4 million. Thank you, Captain. Okay, so that was Sir John Redwood. Ben Habib, you're waiting in the wings there. You no doubt were listening to Sir John's customary upbeat 11 out of 10 for Boris Johnson performance. That's what John does. Any reaction to anything he said there before we go into the conversation you and I have been having obsessively over the last 2 days over WhatsApp, and that is picking apart the actual 1,246-page agreement and whether it achieves a Brexit or not? What do you make of what Sir John Redwood said just then?
Well, I very broadly agree with what John said. And you know, one of the great things about what's going to happen on the 1st of January is that we will actually be able to hold our politicians to account. We haven't really been able to do that. So even though, and I'm jumping ahead slightly, even though I think Boris Johnson has not complied with his manifesto pledges, come the 1st of January, we will be able to hold him to account over it. And is the deal a good deal? No, I don't think it's a good deal. I think it's not really sovereign compliant. I think it gives us enough authority and power to become sovereign and to, as John says, exercise practical sovereignty. But as it stands at the moment, it's a pretty lousy deal.
Yeah, I know you've written in The Spectator today, which has been kind of really boiling down all the conversations that we've been having for the last couple of days. So do you think this deal actually gets Brexit done? And in particular, let's pull this back into fishing. I think you and I can concur, fishing is the biggest letdown of this deal. How badly betrayed do you think British fishermen have been by this deal, Ben?
They've been completely betrayed. The Prime Minister whipped up, including Michael Gove, by the way, whipped up the support of the British people for fishing in order to win the referendum in 2016. Michael Gove kept referring to I think his stepfather or someone who worked in the industry and citing that as his complete commitment to the industry. And Boris Johnson held up a fish, as you might recall, at one of the hustings that he had with, you know, when he was pitching to be leader of the Conservative Party. And here you have people who repeatedly said fishing would be the litmus test of Brexit. If we get a proper fishing deal, that will really tell you that we've got Brexit done. But here we have a deal, and let me just tell you what the deal is. And I think it's very important to get that out there. We have a transitionary period of 5.5 years, during which time, as you pointed out, Martin, it's questionable whether we get the quota shares that the government says we're going to get. But more importantly, if we wish to terminate that fishing arrangement, we automatically will have terminated on us the trading deal that we've done with the EU. the right to fly our aeroplanes in and out of the European Union, and indeed for our trucks to go back and forth and carry goods. So they have an absolute sword of Damocles behind our neck if we wish to terminate that deal on fishing. That sword of Damocles doesn't disappear in 5.5 years. People have to understand that after 5.5 years, they can still terminate all those things if we terminate the fishing deal. But what happens at 5.5 years is that some independent, scientifically based committee meets on an annual basis, and they determine whether or not the quota share should be altered. Now, that is not what the Prime Minister promised. On the 19th of December, after he won the election, he got up in Parliament, he was questioned on it, and he answered that we would have the right as a sovereign independent nation to set quota shares at our discretion annually in advance, and that there'd be no question of it. So this, if you want to talk about sovereign compliance, this inability to decide who fishes in our waters and how much they take out of our waters is an utter betrayal of that sovereignty and of the fishermen and all the people who support the fishing industry. And as John said, it goes well beyond the 186 coastal constituencies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to just like pick some of the detail out that I've been going through. I, like you, Ben, while other people were having a Merry Christmas with their families, I've been hunched over a computer looking at this bloody trade agreement. And one thing I cannot get my head around, I want to clear this up with you, Ben. Well, I can get my head around it. I want you to clear it up for me. And that is this. There's a lot of people out there who seem to believe that after 5.5 years, we revert to 100% quotas. We're free of the European Union. That's it. We've taken back control. That is not the case, is it, Ben Habib?
That is absolutely not the case. After 5.5 years, it is an independent committee, not the United Kingdom, that looks at the science of fishing and stocks and how they're all doing and so on. And they determine what the quota shares should be and whether there should be any deviation from the quota shares as they are in 2026. If they do not determine that there should be a change, then those quota shares go on potentially ad infinitum. So we are locked into this fishing deal until we have the courage to terminate it.
Now, I want to ask you a question about the flip side of this ability to terminate the agreement and to be out. Sir John seemed quite boorish on this. But Ben, my fear, and I want to ask you about the detail on this, is the cat flap still open for a softening of our agreement, even as it stands now? So, for example, if a Remain alliance or a Remain-centric government were to hold power in future years, could we creep back towards a greater integration, a kind of proxy membership, if you like, with the European Union? Could that happen?
Well, that's a really good question, Martin. And one of the things that you see in this document is very close alignment with the European Union throughout. Even though we're not having to sign up to EU laws for the level playing field, we're not allowed to regress from those laws without significant damages occurring for the United Kingdom, which, by the way, again, I think is not sovereign compliant. But because we're going to be held in orbit around the EU, we're going to be effectively joined at the hip from a regulatory and legal perspective. And if they've got control of our fishing, if they've got control of our rights to fly over Europe, our haulage, etc., then there is a real risk that a Remain-orientated government would find it very easy to rejoin or to get into some kind of associated membership. And that is a real risk. That is a real risk, and it is. It occurred to me reading the document that this is potentially divisive. The other thing I want to mention is that hidden away, it jumped out at me on page 1051. Is this commitment to Horizon Europe, which on the face of it looks like a benign research program of the European Union. But this month, and how coincidental is that, the European Defence Fund was shoehorned into Horizon Europe. The European Defence Fund effectively is the research and development arm for the EU's military ambitions. And it is something that we repeatedly said we would not join up to. So why is this government, which says it wishes to diverge and become sovereign and independent, signing into an EU military program? And we can't get out of that either, Martin. Once we're in it, there are only very EU mechanisms, not unilateral mechanisms afforded to the UK, but EU mechanisms that might get us out. But we can't unilaterally exit. So again, is that sovereign compliant? I don't think so. And why is Boris Johnson signing us up into that?
Yeah, true. I mean, do you remember in January last year, Nick Clegg called any talk of an EU army, quotes, a dangerous fantasy. And yet, Ben, you and I were there when Ursula von der Leyen, in her maiden speech, clearly and implicitly set out the desire for an EU army. Hey, conspiracy theory very quickly becomes fact in the European Union. Ben, that's brilliant. There's some great messages coming in here on the WhatsApp. People watching this on Express. People are saying, Daniel, Ben Habib has nailed it. Thank you, mate. And I think a lot of people, Ben, have been consistently grateful for your ability to cut through all this jargon and legalese and EU claptrap and give it to us straight. Thank you very much, Ben. Please stick around. I need now to move swiftly onwards to one of my favourite people on the planet, let alone my favourite Brexiteers, June Mummery, the Fisherman's Queen. Now, June, you and I have been speaking a lot in the last few days. You've been going through a difficult time, my love. Once again, I want to send you love right now. What's the mood? I know the answer, but tell Unlocked viewers, what's the mood right now amongst the British fishing community, June Mummery?
The mood is absolutely awful, devastating, tears, broken hearts, basically. And, you know, I've sat here now listening to John Redwood, who's very, very upbeat, but John has to realise one important thing. I'm not going to go into the quota side of it. I'm not going to go that deep into the fishing side because I've got two experts that will be doing that very soon. Is 5.5 years? Do they really generally think that the industry will survive 5.5 years? It's on its knees. We have no fish to catch. We don't want your money, government. You know, we'll look after ourselves. We want fish to catch. That's what we want. We want to be able to go in our waters and catch our fish. But we can't. We cannot, because my Prime Minister has thrown coastal communities under the bus so Nissan can sell their cars into the single market. Now, to me, he's divided our country. So coastal communities, do they not matter anymore? He's taken away all their opportunities, all those aspirations that they had because he told them that we would rebuild coastal towns and villages. It's the lies I can't deal with. I can deal with defeat. I've been putting up with this for years with fishing. But when you see genuine good people, good folk, good organisations in the industry being used and abused for votes, to get people on seats, red seats in the House of Lords, no. That's not fair. You cannot go around playing with people's lives. And that's just what happened. These last 5 years, I've been played, the fishermen have been played, the great British public in coastal communities have been played. Now, what part of that is right, Martin? There are 186 coastal MPs. Their duty is to look after their constituents and their constituencies. Now, any of those that vote for this deal tomorrow have betrayed them. They can't tartar up. They can't say, well, we can do this, because that will be more lies on top of the lies they've already told. I mean, David Frost said that, I can quote him here, sovereignty over our laws, our courts, our fishing waters is of course not up for discussion. Theresa May said no community would be left behind. Boris, how many speeches we've been used, Martin? And that side of it, I can't bear to see. I've had fishermen, I've had their wives call me in the last 2 days in tears because we've just handed everything back over to the EU, lock, stock and barrel, basically.
Every time I speak to you like this, I get really, really emotional because, you know, and I've said to you many, many times, you know, my dad was a coal miner. We couldn't save the pits, and I just thought and prayed we could save the ports. I see this as the last honest working class industry left in the UK, and it could have been salvaged. We could have done this, and the sense of betrayal, June, has to be enormous.
The sense of betrayal is huge. I can't get my head around it. I mean, I knew that Boris probably would give a bit. I was expecting something, some way to give, yeah. But he hasn't given a bit, he's given the whole lot and more. I mean, whatever possessed him? Who's been telling him what to do? I mean, what has he done? I mean, Edward Heath was an absolute charlatan, you know, but he's had years to look at that. He can look at what happened back in history to know you don't do it again, Boris. But what has he done? He's done it again. He's done that and more. Has the man lost his mind? I mean, I don't want, you know, lots of people have got hold of me on social media saying, oh, June is sour grapes. I don't want to sound selfish. I really don't. But when you see people, and not just me, worked so hard, so bloody hard, to take back what is rightfully ours, to make people's lives better, you know, what gives him the right to do that to people? What gives him the right to upset families and create more social problems like drug abuse and alcoholism and loneliness? We had a chance to create thousands of jobs. Don't care what anyone say to me. I know that. I know I've done a feasibility study that I launched last October with George Eustace in Westminster. £160,000 worth of taxpayers' money we used to write this report to rebuild an industry. And just like that, he's taken it away from us. What right has he got to do that?
Well, the problem is so often, and I think this is the peculiar trait of the Conservative Party, and I'm going to say this now, and that is the working classes have been trampled on for generations. They've been used as votes, and when push comes to shove, politics beats loyalty to communities. And I think this is going to be a major, major headache for the Conservative Party, never let alone the COVID crisis and what we're going to see in the new year in terms of the economic devastation and unemployment. This is about now fighting back. This is about demanding getting some fishing rights back. June, I want to talk to you a bit more about that in a minute. Can I quickly move on to Paul Lyons? Paul, it's been so abundantly clear since the very, very beginning. You know, people say to June Mummery, they say to me, they say to all of us all the time, what are you getting your knickers in a twist about? This is a tiny fraction of the GDP of the UK. And yet we've seen from June, you know better than anybody, this isn't just about what is, it's about what could be. And what could have been was something special. And that's been snatched away, Paul Lyons, hasn't it?
Well, the GDP argument don't hold up, because when you go in a fishing community, a town or a village, that's 100% of that town or village. That's what keeps families together. That's what pay the mortgage, pay the bills, and buy the little girls dress for her dancing classes. That's what keep communities together. Boris Johnson talked a good talk, and the Michael Gove story about his dad, is that what respect he had for his dad then? He used that as a heartfelt of what that devastated the community of Aberdeen in fishing, and his family got pushed out. Is that what respect he had for his family, that he'd sell Fisherman away? I mean, the whole problem is not about where we go from here. It's all about the damn lies that were told, and we got used as an industry as whipping boys for them to sell the dream to the country. He got an 80-seat majority. And I think people malign sovereignty with being able to control the water around our coasts. But when you talk about quotas and get into details like that, Europe for years has been manipulating the figures. We've got to get nothing back because they got the figures so high. Holland caught 25% of their Dover sole quota this year. They'll still catch the same amount next year. But they'll say, hey, go, there's some back. Well, that's not fished. That's manipulation. And they'll carry on manipulating this, and our government will go along with them and tell everyone what a good deal we got. Well, we got nothing. And I've been 4 years now telling everyone, you know, stick with the government, stick with them Tories. They got to see us through. They got to put this right. I've got to face them people now. And I know a lot of people's put money for their sons to have boots, because this was got to be a whole new industry. And that was got to be good again in coastal regions. But I now got to look these people in the face and say, do you know what? I knew I was right, but your government has sold you out as worthless people, because that's exactly what they're saying. I don't know any other government in the world who would not want to use their wars, one, for food security, but to absolutely not secure 12 miles around our coast. That's unforgivable. That's an unforgivable action of what they've done. And I don't know what will ever make it right. I don't know. Within the fishing communities, I don't know what will ever make it right. Because not only have we got problems now, but you also got to realise the government will let 54% of the fish that we win every year, the TAC, total allowable catch, 54% of that is on foreign vessels already. So in actual fact, we really don't control nothing of that. And hearing what Ben said, that shocked me to the core. That means we're going to sign into something that we can never get away from. That's just unheard of. That's just unheard of, and that's unforgivable. And I don't know what we'll do, but I do know one thing, that every community has had an Exocet missile through it that used the sea. And I really don't know what we've got to do, man. I really don't. I don't know what the answers are to it, but I know we will never, ever rebuild an industry after they get 5.5 years to rape and manipulate and do whatever they want with that ocean.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, there is huge support pouring in on Facebook right now for yourself and for June Mummery. Jennifer here is saying quite simply, and I think everyone's going to agree, thank God for June Mummery. Thank God for June Mummery, they're saying. Helen on Facebook is saying if we're not careful, there'll be no fish or ecosystem left in 5.5 years. Jill says, ban super trawlers now. Andre is saying, June, we really feel for all of you and the coastal communities. Can we please send you a hug? June, there's such love and support out there for you, and it really gets to me that I can see that you're really upset tonight. Who can bloody blame you? No one has fought harder and put more of their soul into this than you. Dot is saying, I'm ashamed of this government, and I've been told by the Unlocked team that Boris is getting hammered on Facebook because of this, and June Slater no doubt will concur that in a minute. Now, before we move on to Aaron Fishing for Leave, who's come out some brilliant figures today quantifying what this means, I want to move to you in a minute. I want to say this. I think the sense of political abandonment in the coastal communities, just to end on this one, June and Paul, quickly give me your take on this. These are communities that believed in the dream. They voted for Boris Johnson's Brexit. Now this has happened. What is the political fallout of that? What do you think they're going to feel like about being cheated like this? June Mummery, first you.
Well, obviously they're going to feel betrayed. I'm betrayed, and they have been betrayed. I mean, at the end of the day, what can we do? We just have to hold fire, think about what happens next. There might be a new party that comes along, but you know, I've said it today. Maybe coastal communities should become independent, because obviously nobody cares about them. No one cares about, you know, Jenny and John, who'll be leaving school in a couple of years' time, that wanted to go into an industry. We were guaranteed to have a rebuild of our industry. Thousands of jobs could be created. And I still hope that sometime down the road that will happen. But at present, no, I don't think the Conservative government has let us down badly. Labour are as bad. So I don't know what will happen, Martin. I really don't. I mean, Paul, what do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, down our Fisherman's Quay at Galston, we've already cut the stencils out, and that's going to be sell out Tories. That's what that's going to be on there. So everyone who drives past that, they'll know exactly how we feel. And I don't think anyone will disagree with me. It's a sellout Tory government. That's what it is. Because not only are we share a resource in that North Sea, but we don't share it fairly. If that was a share out and fairness was the major player here, but we're a sovereign nation, but we don't even get the right to use it. We've got to give it to someone else. So that's madness. Absolute bloody madness. What in hell's name they got in their head? And Boris Johnson, Gove and Lord Frost, were they that frightened? Or are they such poor politicians that Barnier is far, far superior at negotiating what they are? Why did we field a weak field of people then? Is that the best we can do? The best we can do is our coastal communities are sold down the river and they don't matter and don't care. Because we're all right, we've got an 80-seat majority. Well, they ain't got no majority now in people's minds because, tell you, they're sellout Tories. That's what they are.
Totally.
Paul, a message has just come in from Michael on Facebook. It simply says this in 2 words. Oh, man, Paul, people are completely agreeing with what you're saying. Viv, the main reason I voted to leave was for fishing. Shame on Boris. Leslie is saying the public will get behind the fishing community. We are with you, June. And Paul, John Redwood, tell Boris we are not messing about. Enough talk. Let's see some action. Adrian, Boris borrowed votes. It's time to give them back. Please, Boris. And there's a huge appetite. June Slater, want to talk to you about this in a moment, about an appetite for a fresh political movement. But before that, let's stick with fishing and move on to Aaron Brown. Aaron, sorry to keep you waiting, mate. You must be freezing your whatsits off up there now. I know you're on your boat. Where are you, mate?
My whatsits have left the building. It's that cold. It's absolutely Arctic monkeys here.
Where are you, mate?
I'm stood aboard the boat in the harbour, sitting here desperately waiting to speak to you, Martin. You know? Okay,
well, it's nice to feel wanted. Actually, it's not that, is it? You just want to get off this call and get into the warm, and who can blame you? Look, Aaron, a superb report you put out today on Fishing for Leave. You've analysed the annexes, those tables in the withdrawal agreement, that 1,246-page agreement that we've been talking about. I also spent, for my sins, hours and hours and hours going through the quotas. I know you've done the same, and you've translated those quotas, haven't you, into financial value. And tell us about the numbers and tell us about the financial black hole that Boris's agreement has left the fishing industry in, Aaron.
Well, but before we get on to the exact numbers, it is a complete betrayal. I mean, there seems to be no turn that Tories will not polish for the good of the party. The spin that's coming out at what this deal means is disingenuous, to say the least, and Ben did very well at framing the kind of wider context of the agreement that we'll get to at the end. Coming back to the detail, it's about a 4.8 billion black hole that Boris has created on fishing. And yes, we did sit down and do the figures. That's been 2 of our projects for the nights, sitting up to 3 in the morning to go through it and quantify what it actually means. Because, of course, what we've heard from the Tories in full spin mode is 25%, and it'll be great, and it'll be this, and on it goes. And, of course, as we know, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Percentages can particularly be manipulated, but the one thing that can't be manipulated is tonnage. And when you take what we currently receive as shares under relative stability, these egregious exploitationary shares that were locked in back in the 1970s when the EU fiddled the figures. And when you take what we get just now, we only get 23% of the total allowable catch for the shared sea areas round about the British Isles. If we had become fully independent and been no different to Norway, Iceland or Faroe, and we could have turned around and said to the EU, very sorry, chums, there'll be no access into these rich waters that are ours until we move or see you agree to a thing called zonal attachment, the international principle of zonal attachment. And what zonal attachment is, just for the people at home, is what that means is fair shares, as Paul Lyons alluded to. And what it means is between coastal states, nations receive shares of TACs, shares of quotas, based on the amount of fish of that stock that's in their waters, right? That's what happens between the EU and Norway. The EU does not claim huge tonnages of fish off the north coast of Norway or even the south coast of Norway because the majority of that stock is in Norway's waters. So basically what we've got is 23% just now. That represents some 550,000 tonnes worth £750 million. What we should have had if we had become fully independent and totally free of the CFP was 66% of the TACs, and that would have been worth 2.15 billion. Boris has only managed to scramble back 160,000 tonnes worth £200 million, which means good old Boris, ruffle the hair, I'm with the people, has only actually gone and left behind 900,000 tonnes of the British people's resources worth £1.6 billion. If you then, or £1.2 billion, beg your pardon, if you then translate that to processed value from catch value, it comes to some 4.8 billion. So we have absolutely been shafted. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to, and it was a very good piece put out in Briefings for Brexit, is these are our fish. These are our waters. Ted Heath gave them away, and that was reprehensible enough. Heath kind of knew what was coming, but nobody knew the full consequence. Boris knows the full consequence. We're living with that hell. We've seen the decimation of our fleet, and he's just turned around to them and basically said, oh, well, you know what, just give us a bit back to save political face, and we'll manage to try and polish the turd back home in Westminster, use the media to spin it, and we might just get away with it. Well, they're not going to get away with it, because I am going to make it my life's mission for the next 5 years, if it so God kills me, to smash the Tories in every single coastal constituency around the country. We absolutely smashed David Cameron and George Osborne in the referendum when we came up through Tower Bridge, right to the doors of Parliament. And David Cameron, even then, it shows you how big a liar he is, he had the effrontery to stand at the dispatch box and say British fishermen couldn't get any better deal than they've got already when we're sitting out in the Thames. So again, the Tories are back at it again for decades now, across the European issue. They have sat and basically said one thing and done another, because at the end of the day, the majority of the Tory party are globalists, the majority of the Tory party are EU federalists, and really all being seen to get Brexit done was saving the Tory party. So at the end of the day, when the push really came to shove, the will wasn't there to fight for us. So no, we've left behind a huge amount of the British people's resources. As they said in Briefings for Britain, the EU should have been grateful for anything it got above 0%. But what we've done is started off with the status quo, and, oh, please, can we have some of our fish back? Well, that's not bloody good enough. So, yeah, they've absolutely shafted us. Sorry to rant away here, but as you can tell, I'm a bit cross. Really, when it comes down to it, the Tories are trying to spin this as a 5.5-year agreement. After that, we're free and clear. We just are not. So not only have we left a huge amount of our resources behind, we've left behind the ability to claw that back, and that is what is full independence. Because of course Norway has full independence. If it doesn't like what's on the table as an arrangement between it and its neighbour, the EU, as it is obliged to do under international law, Norway walks away. Norway just says, sorry boys, we're not happy with that agreement. We're gone. Call us when you want to be sensible. None of your boats are coming into our waters, and of course, because EU boats need Norwegian waters, and because EU consumers need Norwegian fish, the EU generally comes to heel or a compromise. And we had that chance, and we've blown it. And it smashed people's dreams. So many people in the industry were geared up to put their lives, their finances in the line to try and rebuild an industry. We didn't ask for help. We didn't want handouts. We just wanted our nation's resource to go to sea, to bring that in, and the rest would have done it itself. And that's gone. That's crushed.
Okay, mate. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with what you're saying there. There's been a huge response on Facebook since you went into your rant, as you call it. I don't think it's a rant; it's an impassioned monologue, and you're bang on the money. Helen simply says, "Wow, I had no idea of the financial magnitude of this." Julie, I've got no faith in this government. Now, bear in mind, this has been hosted on the Daily Express. The Daily Express has been perhaps the most Boris supporting arena in the entire media. Trevor, I am heartbroken. Charlie, Aaron, well said, mate. And Leslie, we are with you. Many of us feel the same, and we will stand and fight with you until the bitter end. Patrick, we're behind you, the fishing industry, everybody on this call, and Unlocked. And please remember, if you'd like us you can support Unlocked to make the media that we do with the new kids on the block. You can click the support button to give us some support. I want to pick up on one thing I said to you on the phone yesterday, Aaron, and that's this thing about the 100 million. The 100 million that Boris kind of threw out there at the press conference. And you said something really interesting to me, and that is 100 million, you could basically spend that in one port and you wouldn't even be able to notice.
Yeah, well, there for a good example for you is Peterhead Harbour. They redeveloped a whole new fish market, extra capacity, because stocks are good. Stocks are only good because the EU was so bad and it decimated so much of our fleet. But it's not us that's going to get the advantage of it. So Peterhead there built a whole new market, deepened out the basin, a whole host of facilities getting geared up for this, and that was 100 million. So when you look at all the other ports that should be built up, if we had gone from 23% of the quotas, from 500,000 tonnes back up to what we should have had, which was 1.6 million tonnes, not 1.6, we could have rebuilt so many ports, and we can't now. And the big thing that worries me about this is the longevity of it. I don't believe it'll end in 5 years, because the punishment clauses continue. What it then comes down to, and both in the future and with this agreement and with the withdrawal agreement and with Brexit as a whole, again and again, is what the ERG Bill Cash has actually written, which is self-defeating of his own argument, and that is a robust government, a government that's prepared to throw its weight about. But again and again and again, the weak, effeminate political establishment in Whitehall will not do it. So we've got our hands tied behind our back because we aren't able to control access to our waters. We aren't able to decide quota shares by ourselves. What we are basically going to be done is ruled by joint committee. And if that joint committee, the EU side, because obviously they've got an entrenched interest in the status quo, doesn't like what Britain's suggesting, doesn't like what Britain's wanting to do, then, and we can't reach an agreement, the agreement from the year before applies. So it's Groundhog Day every day. As Ben pointed out to the viewers, if Britain has the temerity, particularly within the 5.5 years, to say we've had enough of this stuff, you wear off, then the EU can start to rescind other parts of the agreement. And of course, no British government is going to do that because they haven't got the spine to do it. So I think we're basically stuffed.
Okay, Aaron, I need to interject here because a question has come in on Facebook, and it's a common question that's been coming out, particularly from pro-Boris Brexiteers about this deal. You'd have heard this many times, but let's answer this as best we can. And June, Paul, Ben, feel free to chip in on this one as well. It's a common question. How will you be able to catch all these fish that you want? Anyway, if you get 100% quotas, we haven't got the boats to catch them. Stop complaining. This Brexit is a price worth paying. We can rebuild our fleet over the next 5.5 years. Aaron, you're shaking your head.
Well, this is a pernicious lie that the kind of EU infiltrated media has disimbued onto the public. We don't have the boats to catch the fish. Now, there is areas where the industry can very much be rebuilt, but let's be clear here for a start, right? Under EU rules, under the EU quota system, which doesn't work in a mixed fishery, fishermen are being forced to discard huge amounts of fish. People have seen that. It's an immoral outrage. And the reason they're having to discard is to find the species they're allowed to keep, right? It's basically from want of quota. So just now, say the boats in the North Sea go to sea, they've got plenty of haddock quota. As they're looking for haddocks, they catch cod, but because they've got no cod quota, they've got to discard it. A particular poor example is down in Cornwall. The Cornish boats are going to sea and they're catching vast amounts of haddocks that are new to the grounds, but they've got to discard them. Now, if we had that quota back, a lot of it would have been absorbed into just covering for the discards, allowing the boats that are already there to land what they're catching but having to dump. So that takes a huge amount up. You've then got other boats who have been pushed towards shellfish who could jump back into the whitefish fleet. That would absorb a lot of the quota up. The UK pelagic fleet, you saw us bring a couple of those boats down to London when we came through Tower Bridge. They can catch about 300, 400, 500 tonnes an hour. Again, their pelagic season lasts weeks. Again. So on the pelagic species, which we could get a huge amount back of, our big boats could dial up their fishing effort, or even better, if you want to look at coastal communities, a huge amount of that pelagic fish could be spread out to coastal communities to allow smaller boats to catch it and go back to what we traditionally had, which was seasonal fisheries. So this whole thing that we don't have the fleet is absolute bullshit, peddled as some sort of comfort blanket for the Tories to hide behind. And the other thing on top of it as well, to add to this, is that if we don't have the fleet, leave it in the bloody sea. You don't need to give it to the EU to catch it. And it says that under UNCLOS. Under UNCLOS, it says a coastal state only has to give to its neighbours the excess, which it cannot, the surplus, which it cannot catch itself. But on the other hand, it also says that a coastal state can set the quotas in line with conservation, or set the catch limits in line with conservation. So if the UK has too much there, just dial the quota down. Just say, sorry, chap, you're not coming in. We're just going to leave this fish in the sea because we think we've maybe got a slight conservation problem, and leave it there to another year. So whether we've got the fleet or not, it's irrelevant. Leave the bloody fish in the sea so it's there for the future. We do have a large chunk of the fleet, and we could rebuild it quite quickly. It's just, I know it takes the Tories 5.5 years to work themselves up in things, but business generally moves a bit quicker than that. So no, that's a pernicious lie. What Boris thinks he's getting back is nothing. It's 14% of what we should have got back. It merely means the EU's losing 7% of their quota. Really, as Paul Line said, all the EU's done is said, there's little bits we're not using, piss off and shut up. And that's it. They've stuffed us. We're locked into rule by joint committee across the agreement. That is not sovereignty.
Okay, Aaron, I'm going to cut across you there. I'm not going to apologise for your language. I think actually you're being remarkably restrained. But Ben Habib was raising his hand. Ben, you want to join in? Fire away, mate.
Well, Aaron makes a very good point that you could leave the fish in the sea. But, you know, Boris supporters, when they say that we haven't got the ships to catch the fish, are actually admitting that 4.5 years of Tory party governance, in the full knowledge that we were going to get our waters back, have done absolutely nothing to prepare for it. You know, it's actually an admission of a failure, an utter failure in governance. We voted to leave on the 23rd of June, 2016. It's now the end of 2020. If they think that we haven't got the fleet, then they're admitting the government hasn't done its job. We should have the fleets, we should have the processing plants, we should have the hospitality sectors on the back of it. We should have everything absolutely ready right now. But even if we don't, and probably we can't catch 1.6 million tons of fish a year, leave it in the sea. Every fisherman knows, I fish recreationally, every fisherman knows you have to rest the water. You need to give fish time to recover. And what we've had for 40 years is these European trawlers coming in, decimating our seabeds, decimating our fish, reducing the total potential take by all the damage they do. Leave it in the sea, the industry will come up for it and make up where the government has singularly failed to provide to fulfill its obligation.
Okay, so before we cut back now to June Slater, who's been waiting very, very patiently, although she does have a drink, so she's keeping herself occupied. I want to quickly cut back to June Mummery, if I could, June. People are asking here about DEFRA. Can you just explain to me what DEFRA is? And more to the point, what the hell have they been up to for the past 5.5 years? Why have they not been rebuilding the fleet?
DEFRA is the problem. I've said all along, I think the reason that Boris has gone for this deal, a lot of that is because DEFRA is not prepared. I mean, Paul and I sit on a meeting every other Wednesday. We've fed into that for 9 months. And we know that they are not ready. I was always told that at DEFRA, if you're not very good at your job, you get promoted. That's why you always end up with the idiots at the top. And I truly believe that they are not ready, and they have taken it out on the whole industry. They'll be very, very worried at our next meeting. Next week, Paul and I have a meeting with DEFRA. But no, DEFRA's not ready. The government's not ready. That they have traded away our precious fishing industry and the UK's most sustainable, renewable resource.
Well, if I could just interject here, one last point before we get to June. Sorry, June, God bless you, but I'm freezing, so if I don't make it now, you might see an Eskimo before I get round to it. So the main point in all this is continually, again and again, throughout this process of trying to win Britain's independence back, again and again, we've heard the good story, and then when it's not delivered, it's, oh, well, we'll get there in the end. Now, not to blow one's own trumpet, but fishing for leave, we were the first to get what Theresa May was up to when she announced at party conference the Great Repeal Bill. And that was we would adopt all EU laws, and that left the chance for Sir Humphrey and the civil service to run along in parallel with the EU. That then morphed into Chequers and the withdrawal agreement, which of course didn't just do it by accident, it actually codified it. And Boris's deal really doesn't go much different to that. The principle's still there if the wording's different. So we're not absolutely in the EU's bed being dictated to, but what we're in is John Ashworth, a long-time campaigner in this, who was really the person that put fishing in the map back in the 1990s. What really we've joined into here is a merger of sovereignty, is what it is. We're going to be run by a whole series of about 30 joint committees. Now, the ERG, oh yes, well, it's not ideal, humble grumble, but we'll get there in the end. Well, we're not going to get there in the end. And the reason why is one which Peter Hitchens made, the great journalist in the Mail made at the referendum. He says, a referendum is a cheat's way out. He says, until a political party, and therefore the civil service as well, who believes in British independence and safeguarding the national interest, occupies and holds the levers of power, you are trying to force reluctant individuals to do something they don't want to do. And those individuals are reluctant because it comes down to another great author, Caerleigh Barnett, who said Britain lost its empire, lost its prestige, and crawled into bed with Europe because the British governing class moved from being hard-nosed mercantilists who believed in safeguarding the national interest to effectively airy-fairy Etonians, people who believed in the global good and good faith and showing your neighbours how it's done and effectively sort of the white man's burden, as Rudyard Kipling put it in his famous or infamous poem. And that is what Whitehall is imbued with. Whitehall and the government are not imbued with doing what the Norwegians do, or even doing what the EU does, which is safeguarding Britain's national interest and fighting tooth and nail for it. They're imbued with this idea that we should be in bed with the Europeans. So they've not got the interest to stand up for us. So the idea that at the end of 5 years you're going to have a British administration, probably a British Labour administration, banging the table saying we are not going to take it anymore, it's just a nonsense. It absolutely is. So they're going to vote this deal through. We're going to be sold into something that satisfies nobody. The British public is increasingly see that we're being run by a joint committee with bureaucrats, and probably Peter Mandelson's looking for a job, so people like him will end up in these joint committees. They're going to be furious. So all Boris has effectively done is not put the issue of Europe to bed. They've just come to a fudge that's kicked the can down the road.
Aaron, I completely agree. And again, Facebook's going mad for you, mate. Jim is saying, Aaron, we want you to stand. So people want you to stand up as a politician. A lot of people are saying that about June Mummery and Ben.
I'm bloody standing up already.
Yeah, that's only so you don't fall. It's only so you don't fall in the water. But we have to cut to June Slater. June has been sitting there patiently. I think it's the first time in June's life she's probably been quiet on the phone for an hour. June Slater. Facebook is going mad. People cannot contain their passion, their fury, their indignant, righteous anger for this government. And this is on the Daily Express website. I mean, wow. June, since the very, very beginning, when you first started making those videos about the incompetence that are running the country, you've now amassed 120,000 Facebook followers just via your honesty, your straight talking, your sharp tongue, your glorious wit. June, give us a flavour of what people have been saying since this press conference was announced by Ursula von der Leyen and Boris Johnson on Christmas Eve.
You've got to remember that people have had a lot to put up with COVID and one thing and another, and they're tired and worn out, and they can't even see the families. So you've got to remember they're down. Sadly, like most people, the way it's been spun by the media and the Tory party, we believed we were on a good thing and we were on our way out, and this is great. And I've even had people tagging me in posts with bunting up, and I've swiftly untagged myself. It's about time, as far as fishing is concerned, that men in suits stop deciding what people in oilskins have to put up with, because it's them that's out there roping and using the gear in 4-8 gales, trying to bring a catch home that the EU pick about with. The EU have been raping our seas. Let's not hide behind any rocks here. And we have had weak, pathetic Tory government since David Cameron and Nick Clegg came to power in a coalition. I've seen more forceful arrangements made at a Tupperware party. We have nobody that's got a backbone. We have nobody that's got any gonads to take this country forward and turn around. There's no need for any of this discussion. There's no need for any of this agreement at all. We have what is called WTO rules, and it's not a scary place. It's what the rest of the world use to trade with the EU. It's what Canada uses. It's what Thailand uses. It's what everybody uses to just make trade deals and get on with each other. Oh no, Great Britain has to surrender its fishing. It has to surrender part of its landscape, Northern Ireland. It has to surrender. This is not a deal. This is a stitch-up. Boris Johnson, you have the audacity to come on that TV in the middle of what we're being what's inflicted upon us with COVID and with Brexit, and start spouting about your green future, your bright green economy, while simultaneously allowing super trawlers to steal fish in unbelievable numbers from our seas, whilst killing dolphins. Full shoals of dolphins being killed with these massive big nets, and nothing is said. No, we'd rather pat Greta Thunberg on the back, and we'd rather tell everybody in the EU that we're looking forward to working with them closely with the new green agenda, which is pathetically discriminatory for the poor. The poor will not be able to afford your electric cars, Boris, so you're subjugating them to public transport. This is not the country I wanted to live in. This is not the parliament I wanted to look after my affairs. We voted for a Tory government that's about, I don't even know why Labour's got any complaints. I don't know why, if you're a Labour voter, you're moaning about the Tories. They couldn't be more left-wing. People like John Redwood, sadly, are thin on the ground. There's not enough of them. And the ERG, they've got the same backbone that Boris has got. They're sifting through paperwork that shouldn't even exist. That's your problem. You look at your screen tonight. You look at what the likes are doing. You look if there's any love arts coming up, because I'm only telling you what they're telling me, because I respond to the public. I don't just set a page up and like and follow and ring my bloody bell and make my profile grow. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what the people think. And from Barnoldswick to Bacup, to Burnley, to Blackburn, to Rottenstall, to Chorley, to Accrington, inland places actually agree with Aaron. We have got your back. We have got the coastal communities back. We are the working people of Britain. And believe me, Britain, you don't need to put up with this two-party system. And there is a unique and simplistic way around it where we can stuff it back up them. You've got to forget political parties. Forget it. What you need is 50 individuals who can self-fund a campaign, who don't need the public's money, who don't want to spend it on leaflets. Have you ever voted off a leaflet? Have you ever placed a vote on an MP because a leaflet dropped through your door, or a big rosette? It turned up with a rosette. Who needs all that paraphernalia? It costs money. Keep the costs down. Fly under the radar, be a dam buster, get in there, 50 independents who can self-fund a campaign till they get a seat in Parliament. You're not going to be a government. You don't need a manifesto. You don't need all the red tape that you need to set a political party up to find out where all the donations are going, because you don't need any donations. What you do, you fly under the radar. You get the Ben Habibs of this world. You get the MartinDaubneys of this world. You get the Aaron Browns of this world to stand in constituencies where you know they'll win. And they take the seats off them. They take them back off this 80-seat majority, because I'm damn sure that we don't want dictating to, like we've been dictated to this last 9 months. The last... Well, people say, hang on, I know you put your hand up, you want me to finish, but I'm on a roll here. We have been told to stay in. You can't hug your granny, you can't see Lord, you can't do sod all. Who's decided? If I was in government, I'd be looking at the advice from Sage, and I'd be looking at the advice from that camp too. And I'd be listening to Aaron. I'd be talking to people in the fishing industry. I wouldn't just be sitting around a table with other ministers deciding what's going on. And Barnier, don't kid yourself, Barnier is some hot shot. He's got away with murder. He spends more time thinking about his suits than he does fishing and the EU. The guy's a peacock. And we're that weak, we've let him run roughshod over us. And then we've got Ursula von der Leyen, Germany's favourite. Nobody wanted her. She made a hash of defence, and she now has a say in what goes on in 186 coastal communities. We are sick of it. There is a way around it. It doesn't cost any money. You don't need a political party. All the public need to know is, from this moment on, Coming up to the 2019 general election, I kept saying on my page, don't listen to the media. It's not neck and neck. Every day I went on, no, don't listen to the media. It's not neck and neck. The Tories they're well in front. Corbyn's tanking support. Nobody listened. They all got the heebie-jeebies. They all got the wobbles, and they voted for the Tories because they were afraid of Jeremy Corbyn. The Tories have made that bad of a job of Brexit, and that bad of a job. And don't get me wrong, Labour won't be any better. They'll be whatever you think of the Tories, Labour's 10 times worse. We don't want either of them. We want independents to stand as an opposition to what government wants to throw at us from any direction. End.
June, let's give June a round of applause. Come on.
That's what I think, and that's what I'm picking up from people.
Now, June Slater, I wasn't waving my hand to interject. I was pumping the air with my fist because I'm in absolute agreement with you, and I will stand with you, and I will stand up and get involved in Summit. That is definitely going to happen. We're going to do something positive with this movement. We have to turn all of this negative anger and energy into something positive. And let me tell you this, June Slater, Facebook has gone berserk with you talking, and everyone is saying, agreeing things, they love you. Boris has finally exposed as the chancer he is. That's from Brian. June is our queen, they're saying. Jenny was saying, I was waiting for June. This is slightly strange, but I love it. Elliot, I love Unlocked and June Slater so much, I'm watching it on my wedding anniversary. There might be a divorce after this one. Pearl, you tell him, June. Go, lass. Go on, June. June, 100%, David. I want June in the House of Commons. Elizabeth, June is the best. June for Prime Minister. That's from Nicola. Ben and June and Paul and Aaron and myself to stand. Well, let's have a bit of that. This is going beautiful. My highlight of this year has been watching Wake Up Britain with June Slater on Unlocked. She's kept me smiling in these difficult times. Phil, keep rolling, June Slater. June, I hope you're not offended that I kept you till last, but I know you're the Rod Stewart act. I know you're the highlight act of Unlocked. Every time you come on.
So good in tight.
This is beautiful.
Anyway.
Now, the thing that I love about this is that everybody on this call, we've spoken the last few days and we've had some dark moments. And even on Unlocked tonight, June, Mummery, it breaks my heart to see you like close to tears. I just want to reach in and give you a hug. And I've been doing this in Brussels and Strasbourg, and when we're going around the country campaigning, and God, we've got to turn this into some new movement. We've got to get this back on its feet. And June Slater, you're dead right. Ben Habib, I know I've got to do a bit more work on Ben yet. I've got to massage those shoulders. We can do that, June, Ben, once this lockdown ends. Now then, a traditional part of Unlocked is to sign off with a message for Boris Johnson. I think it's really important, and please, if we can, refrain from using too many expletives. I'll allow you one. I'm in a generous mood. A message for Boris Johnson. Let's go from the top of the show. Ben Habib, message for Boris Johnson.
Well, my message to Boris is, Boris, you failed to fulfill any of your Brexit manifesto pledges. You failed to get back all of the United Kingdom. You failed to get back fishing. You failed to get back total control of our laws. You failed to get control of our borders. But it's not the end of your tenure yet. And one thing really good that you've done is give the United Kingdom the unilateral right to terminate this new agreement on 12 months' notice. So my message to you, Boris, is use the next couple of years to get the United Kingdom absolutely ready to terminate this new agreement, and then terminate and make sure you fulfill your manifesto pledges before we get to the next election. Otherwise, you will have June Slater to answer to.
And that, I think, there can be no bigger terror to any Prime Minister than the threat of June Slater with a rolling pin coming for Boris. And I completely and utterly agree. And it's saying here straight away, Ben for 10, Ben for 10, Ben for 10, Ben Habib, people are loving you. And you know that I love you, mate. The last couple of days, we've been exchanging so many messages when I should have been playing Cluedo with my family. But this agreement has been so interesting. And Ben, you've just been joyously skilled at picking this apart and making it digestible. Thank you for that. I want to move on now to June Mummery. Message for Boris Johnson, June.
My message to Boris Johnson is just why? Why did you do that? Why did you do it? You didn't need to. That is my message. Why have you done it? You know, look at this and look at the reasons why you've done it. You didn't need to. You could have done, even if you had to give the EU a tiny bit, but you've given them all of it. So my message to him is basically one thing: you are a failure.
Strong words, but from the heart. Paul Lines, message for Boris Johnson, Captain.
Well, for someone who aspired to be a Winston, he aspired, in my mind, to be a worm, and he was the worm that turned. And what you need to realise now, that when he tried to sell this deal to the country, he's absolutely betrayed everyone. Not just fishermen, not just coastal communities. He's really betrayed everyone, because he portrayed himself as a great British person who'll stand firm. He ain't. He's sell out Boris. That's what he is. And I reckon he want to really seriously think about where he's going.
More strong words from the heart. Aaron Brown, if you're still with us and you haven't frozen solid and fallen overboard, message for Boris Johnson.
Yep, still with you. No, Boris, the bottler. My message would be, you've left behind 84% of our fish with the EU, and that you've deprived coastal communities of £4 to £8 billion that was ours by right of international law. You are a globalist, you are pro-EU, you've spoken a good game to try and save your backside electorally, but one way or another, what the consequences of this deal are, as Ben Habib said, it's not Brexit, it's not independence, it will come out in the wash. So either you've the option to do the right thing, terminate the agreement at some point soon, because at the end of the day, it is going to be hell on earth. The EU is going to make sure we squirm. We've nothing to fear about trade. All the deal does is negate tariffs, and those tariffs are only 5%. We have surrendered so much, not just in fishing. We've surrendered Ulster, we've surrendered fishing, and we've surrendered large parts of our sovereignty. Terminate the agreement or you'll be toast. That would be my message to him, because it will come out in the wash what this means. Electorally, the Tories will run out of road of being able to say one thing and do another.
Again, from the heart, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to nip off now and get inside somewhere warmer, get a glass of something strong, please do. But before you go, one message just come in. Aaron, you have my vote. That's from Dave on Facebook. There's a lot of love for you guys on Facebook tonight. People are really staying. This feels like the beginning of something fresh, new and exciting, and a new movement. The final word of the night has to go to June Slater. June, you've already had us on our feet once tonight. You've already raised the roof of Facebook. June Slater, message for Boris Johnson to finish off this night's Unlocked.
Boris, it's time to look inward, not outward. Stop thinking with your globalist cap on and get back to basics. Look after your country. If you look after your country and the people who live here, you will become an international hero. You will go down in history instead of down the pan. That's what I'm telling you. It's not too late. We still have an opportunity here to be something great, not part of an EU that's full of failed, flaky politicians. You could be someone truly great. You could be the man I saw that met you in Daubney in Wetherspoons when I first started my campaign to vote Leave. You could be that person. Don't just carry on being who you are, a disappointed Prime Minister with a lot on your shoulders, I'll give you that. You have got to look inward to what the people want, and the people want freedom, and the people want the right to self-determination, and they want their bloody fish back.
June, amazing comments. Look, what a show it's been. You know, I don't know about you, but I started tonight. I started today. The last couple of days been quite low. I got to admit, been quite low. Campaigned for years for this, and what a damp squib it's been. But I hope that tonight's show certainly cheered me up. It certainly made me feel like I've got some stick back in my rocks, lead in my pencil. Thank you to June Slater. Thanks for all tonight's guests. Sir John Redwood, of course, at the top of the show. Ben Habib, chairman of Unlocked, who's been magnificent this year. June Mummery, as I keep saying, one of my favourite people on the planet, the Queen of Fishermen. Paul Lines, just an absolute diamond. Aaron Brown, who's left us now before he froze solid and fell overboard, of Fishing for Leave, doing great work. June Slater, again, thank you so much for helping Unlocked and Signal Boosters this year. Please remember you can support us by clicking that button. We are brand new. Tonight feels like the start of something special. It feels like we can turn this negativity into something positive. Just had a wonderful message in from Shane Farrow, a Devon fisherman we had in a previous episode. Said, absolutely brilliant show tonight. Well done to all involved. You're giving the fishermen so much hope. And isn't that a great thing to round off on? You know, an industry that feels like it's on its knees, an industry that's really, really going through the doldrums, has promised so much and was let down. If we even bring a crumb of comfort via tonight's show, then I will consider my work well done. I want to thank everybody who supported us in 2020. We're just getting started. Trust me, 2021, we're not going away, especially with this deal that's come through. Our work is just beginning. Thank you for all your support. Thanks to all of tonight's guests. I feel in a really good mood. I'm going for a glass of wine. Thank you for watching Unlocked. It's been magnificent. Thank you and good night.